Good evening. Welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study. I'm glad you joined us. Let me give you just a little update on my condition. Some of you have been praying. A lot of you have been praying, which I thank you for. Cheryl and I do. I've been going back and forth to MD Anderson the last 3 weeks, every week, and I'll be going every 21 days. I feel great. We're just trusting God, so please keep praying for me, and thank you so much for doing that. So let's go into in the news tonight. Let me give you this one. It's under prophecy, and it's pretty exciting if you've really been following it. The Ring of Fire Rosh Hashanah eclipse is coming this October. So why do solar eclipses keep falling on such noteworthy dates? In 2024, there will be a total of just 2 solar eclipses. The first one already happened on April 8th, if you remember. It was known as the Great American Eclipse of 2024. And it occurred just after the sun had gone down in Israel and the first day of the first month of the Hebrew calendar had begun. Now, store that away for a moment. The second solar eclipse of 2024 will take place this October on the 2nd. When it occurs, the sun, again, will just have gone down in Israel. And watch this, the festival of Rosh Hashanah, the new year, will just have started. Is it just a coincidence that the first solar eclipse of 2024 happened to fall on the very first day of the first month of the Hebrew calendar, and the second solar eclipse of 2024 just happens to fall on the day that is celebrated as the Jewish New Year? For those that are able to view this eclipse, and you won't be able to do it from America, it will truly be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. According to USA Today, the moon will begin to cross the face of the sun at 1542 UTC time. So when this eclipse begins, the festival of Rosh Hashanah will just have started. Will something unusual also happen during the fall festivals this year? Well, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But unlike the Great American Eclipse of 2024, the eclipse on October 2nd will not be visible again in the continental United States. So many people out there are entirely convinced that the solar eclipses of 2024 are just completely random events that have no significance whatsoever. And I can certainly understand why they would choose to see things that way. But Jesus specifically warns us, quote, "There shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars in the last days. And in order to have a solar eclipse, the sun and the moon must both be involved." Here in 2024, we've already witnessed a major solar eclipse on the very first day, again, of the very first month of the biblical calendar. And now we're going to witness a solar eclipse on the very first day of the 7th month of the biblical calendar, again, which is considered the Jewish New Year. If that's just a coincidence, it is a really, really bizarre one. Could it be possible that someone's trying to get our attention? Could it be possible that this year is being marked for some reason? In Genesis chapter 1, and you've heard me say this over and over again through the years, God specifically stated that one of the reasons he created the sun and the moon was because he planned to use them as signs. They're for signs, seasons, and times. We've seen this all throughout history, and now I'm convinced that this year on his calendar is being marked for a purpose. Will it be a sign of chaos? Will it be a sign of an increased war? Or maybe even Jesus returning? Well, we'll see. I, for one, choose the last one. Let me give you a little bit more and tell you what's happening in our economy. And again, we're getting a lot of gaslighting all over the place in America. Obviously, you've been used to that, seeing our liberal media. So I'd like to tell us that our economy is doing really well. And it may not have hit you smack dab in the face yet, but obviously you're paying for higher grocery bills, gas bills, power bills. And so let me just continue to give you an update on what's happening in our economy. There's a couple articles. Retail stores and restaurants are collapsing all across America. It's incredibly sad to watch the United States economy slowly but surely come apart at the seams all around us. There's a lot of places that are shutting down their brick and mortar. Milk Bar and Grill is going bankrupt. Kuma's Corner, bankrupt. Red Lobster, bankrupt, shutting down. Tijuana Flats, shutting down their stores. Sticky Fingers Joint, you may not have heard some of these. Most of them are Midwest, bankrupt. Boxer Raymond, bankrupt. We really are in the midst of a restaurant apocalypse. And more of our favorite eateries are getting into trouble with each passing day. It's very hard to run a restaurant, especially on tight budgets. A large number of KFC locations just suddenly shut down in the Midwest. Dozens of KFC locations closed all across the Midwest this week. Up to 25 restaurants owned by major fast food franchisee EYM Chicken have shut in Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin, according to all the reports. At one time, KFC was such a wonderful American success story. But now, KFC restaurants are becoming an endangered species. If you still have a KFC in your community, you should visit it right now while you still can, because it may not be there soon. Meanwhile, we just learned that the chain of gas stations and convenience stores in the Midwest have also been closing down. Team Cherie Koss was forced to shut down all operations in 25 locations in Michigan and Wisconsin after its landlord, Mountain Express Oil, filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy liquidation on August. So Gary, Indiana, best known birthplace of Michael Jackson, is the home to the highest abandoned home rate in the nation at 31.41%. So we have stores closing down. We have businesses that are going out of business. We have landlords that can't rent. We have homes that are being sold for nothing in certain areas. Just listen to this. We also continue to see more signs of trouble in the banking industry. According to the Daily Mail, the United States lost 41 more bank branches in just 1 2-week period recently. Of course, lots of retail stores are being permanently shut down as well. Now, Big Lots has raised the number of stores that is likely to close to a maximum of 315. Sadly, this is really the beginning of the end for Big Lots because it won't be able to survive much longer. They've already closed hundreds of stores, but that hasn't helped much. And Rite Aid is far from alone. It's going to close also. All over the nation, once thriving businesses are being boarded up. Now I want to inject something here. I heard Kamala Harris the other day, which I'm not crazy about hearing, to be honest with you, because she has no platform and she's just a suit behind a pulpit, or excuse me, behind a desk with a teleprompter. But she said she's going to create in her economic plan 25,000 new small businesses. Did she tell you that last year 550,000 small businesses closed under her and Biden's administration, the second year in a row? So that means nothing. It's a whole lot of verbiage that's nothing. I wish people would really understand what's going on today politically, because people are being hoodwinked in America. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for stupidity. And so I'm going to be very, very, very honest with you. There's no platform. We have no idea what she's about. So I don't want to be too political, but I want to let you know that America's in trouble. It's in trouble economically. Let me give you this one also, not to mention domestically and foreign and our foreign policy. This one's another one. This says this: is the media trying to gaslight us about the state of the U.S. economy? Well, obviously the answer is yes. So how many times have you heard that the mainstream media tell you the economy is just doing great in recent months? I've seen the word booming used over and over again to describe the economy, and it makes me absolutely sick. The level of gaslighting that we're witnessing right now is totally off the charts. Millions of Americans are sleeping in their vehicles. Thousands of businesses are failing all over the nation, as I just told you. And most of the country now believes the American dream is no longer attainable. Forget about what CNN and NBC and ABC and MSNBC, forget about what they're telling you. They are lying to you, and they're not telling you the truth. If this is what's a booming economy feels like, I'd hate to see what was happened during a recession. I totally understand why the mainstream media is gaslighting us. They want us to believe that everything is fine, so we'll vote a certain way in November. They have an agenda, and they are pushing it really, really hard. It's insulting to me. It's insulting to think that they actually believe Americans are that stupid. And again, I don't know, maybe some are, but it's insulting. But what they're telling us simply doesn't match up with reality. The following are 7 signs that the mainstream media is flat out lying to us about our economy. Number 1, survey after survey has shown that the economy is the number 1 concern for American voters during this election. Number 2, at this point, the economy is in such a rough shape that even Dollar General, as I just told you before, is running out of money. Their stocks tumbled 25%. They are saying that even lower income customers don't have enough money to shop at Dollar General. We should be taking notice to that. Number 3, when the U.S. economy was actually booming, Big Lots was thriving. It's an indicator, it's a barometer. Sadly, today's economic environment has been very hard on the retail chain and is now teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. 4, needless to say, Big Lots is far from alone, because the number of businesses, as I've been sharing with you, that are filing for bankruptcy has reached dizzying heights. According to statistics, by the way, on the Administration Office of U.S. Courts, annual bankruptcy filings totaled 486,613 in the year ending June 2024, with 418,724 cases in the previous year. These are bankruptcies. These are businesses going out of business, small businesses, big businesses. And Harris wants to start up 25,000 businesses. That's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket, even if she could do it. Number 5, according to Zero Hedge Fund, several regional Fed business surveys just fell even deeper into contraction territory. They're contracting. Not a good sign for an economy. 4 more years is not the message being heard from the regional Fed surveys this week, as Philly, Dallas, and Richmond business surveys all slumped deeper into contraction. 6, approximately 2/3 of the entire United States population no longer believes in that the American dream is still alive. 7, last but certainly not least, total household debt in the United States has soared to a level that we have absolutely never have seen before. A quarterly report published this month by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York on household credit and debt found that between the first quarter of 2021 and the second quarter of 2024, credit card debt surged 50%, while household debt, which includes mortgages and auto homes, 22%. In dollar terms, credit card debt rose $770 billion in early 2021 to $1.14 trillion in the most recent quarter, while household debt increased from $14.6 trillion to $17.8 in the same period. What does that mean? It means that people can't afford things and they're putting it on credit more than ever. Sooner or later, Peter's got to pray Paul. Sooner or later, something's going to happen. While stock prices continue to set new all-time highs, which is kind of weird, much of the nation looks like a horror show. For example, just consider what's happened to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. It's a city. A small Arkansas city suffering from severe population decline and economic turmoil has become so abandoned that properties, homes, are being offered for as little as $400 a home. Pine Bluff, a bleak metro that saw its population drop from 49,000 to 41,000 residents from 2010 to 2020, made headlines this month after being panned in a YouTube documentary for Abandoned Atlas. In the movie, filmmaker Michael Schwartz said witnessing the city's decay shocked him, saying it seems like every time I turn a corner, there's another abandoned home or another building left behind. Our communities are falling apart right in front of our eyes. Our economy is falling apart right in front of our eyes. And our entire society is falling apart right in front of our eyes. And you want 4 more years of that? So don't let the mainstream media fool you. The economy really is moving in the wrong direction very rapidly. And it won't be too long before even they are forced to admit the truth. Let's go a little bit further and tell you a little about war. It seems that everything's on a knife edge in our world. Nuclear war is much closer than we dare imagine, this article says. It was a sobering title of an article in The Telegraph. The article on August 21st outlines Russian, Chinese, and North Korean nuclear advances and discusses Russia's work on nuclear-related space-based technologies about which few details are known. And again, most people have no knowledge of this. You'll never hear about this in the media or even social media. You just won't hear it. I'm vetting all these articles all over the world to tell you that these are major articles. These are major happenings. The long-term nuclear threat from space is something U.S. policymakers have been unable to slow down. As the nuclear weapons technology of enemies of the West surges, and I mean surges ahead, analysts are calling for Western nations to start to rebuild and modernize their own arsenals, and to do so as quickly as possible. The nuclear game playing out among many nations today is a reminder that we live in an unprecedented period with conditions that have never ever existed before. Of course, Jesus foretold that if he does not return, he said, no flesh would be saved. Matthew 24:22. The possibility of human annihilation did not exist until the advent of nuclear weapons, roughly 80 years ago. Without the hope of Christ's intervention, this world appears to be headed towards oblivion. Yet the Bible reveals that Jesus will return as Savior of mankind in Acts chapter 1, 9-11. So I'm excited in one sense because this has never been this way before. The last 80 years we could totally annihilate. Jesus said, unless he returns, no flesh will be saved. That's right up to today's news. Let's go a little bit more. And if you know anything about me right now, you know that I'm totally disgusted with American Christianity. And again, not every church, but American Christianity has become extremely secular. And it needs a wake-up call really bad. This article kind of backs up what I've been saying. Epidemic of cultural Christians abandoning the Bible for cultural acceptance. George Barna, and I know George Barna personally, and he is ticked. He does all the surveys. Director of Research at Arizona Christian University Cultural Research Center released new data earlier this month that, quote, reveals the limitations of Christian evangelicism in American society. Corrupt politicians, I'm quoting, dishonest journalists and media outlets, broken social institutions, immoral religious leaders, unconstitutional government programs and policies, and more have generated non-stop headlines highlighting the decadence of American society and the demise of the United States, end of quote. He went on to contend that the depth of depravity is absolutely shocking. Again, I've been preaching it. And that it's indisputable that the decline is a direct result, listen to it, of the spiritual collapse of Christianity in the nation and its pastors. Wow. The data, said guest host and former Congressman Joy Heiss on Thursday's Washington Watch, also strongly suggests that evangelicals are more likely to be shaped by the culture around them than they are to influence or evangelize it. Okay, I'll say it. My opinion. American Christianity, in my opinion, is a feel-good, self-serving meology that mixes very well with the pagan culture all around it. Part of today's issue is that many evangelicals don't really buy the Bible at face value. Many of their beliefs are not consistent, argued Barna. He continued, I'm not saying they're a lost cause or they're bad people, but there's a lot of misinformation in the minds and hearts of people who, even when you define them theologically as evangelicals, they're not buying into what the Bible teaches and they're not living it out. This comes in conflict with the heart of what evangelicalism is supposed to do, Barna contended. Many evangelicals, he said, perhaps get the big picture of Christianity, but they struggle in the sense of trying to apply those core principles of the Bible to everyday situations and their life. As a result, they fall victim to using secular strategies, such as using catchy slogans of feel-good behaviors as promoted by our culture in which we live. They believe, he continued, that the universe was created by God and the reality of Jesus Christ, that he lived on earth and that Satan exists. The issue is not necessarily what they believe, Barna explained, but the fact that it is once you get away from those kinds of Sunday School 101 teachings, things get pretty murky. The nature and application of moral truth, the definition of what the gospel is, and the deeper theological questions that shape our passions and behaviors are things that don't get talked about quite as much in our churches. They never get talked about. And those are the kinds of issues that relate to not only our lives, but also the political issues of the day. Come on, you've got to understand, this is what I've been telling you. It goes on, research shows that evangelicals are significantly unlikely to speak with people who hold different opinions than them. I just came back from MD Anderson, and this is not blowing my horn or Cheryl's. Every time we go out there, we speak to people about Jesus. Every time we go out there, we tell them about Jesus Christ. And we've had amazing, matter of fact, our YouTube driver to the airport was Muslim, and I was able to talk to him about Jesus, and he listened right down the line. But most evangelicals are not doing any of that. They're not taking any opportunities. Barna added, the data also revealed that most evangelicals don't even attend what's usually thought of as being an evangelical church. But perhaps the most notable about these findings, here highlighted, is that if the professing evangelicals don't have a biblical worldview, and they're not being salt and they're not being light in their communities, then they're not evangelizing. So they pose the question, did the study in any way determine what kind of impact that lack of spiritual engagement is having on our culture, our current culture and our society? Unfortunately, Barna replied, it's allowed the media, listen, to become the evangelists of America. Let me repeat it. It's allowed the media to become the evangelists of America rather than the disciples of Jesus, who are called to go out and do everything they can to share the love and the saving grace of Jesus Christ with lost sinners. But in reality, what's happening, there's now an evangelical vacuum in American society, where both evangelicals and the rest of society are taking their cues from the media, which also happens to be one of the primary forces seeking to silence Christianity. It's indescribably frightening. Ultimately, Barna contends if the followers of Jesus aren't willing to go out and talk about him, who's going to do it? He added, the journalists aren't going to be the ones who are professing the gospel to America. All this points to the fact that we've got some major issues to address. As for first steps, Barna urged, the best place to start is within your family. It's parents who have the responsibility of doing everything they can to raise their children up to be spiritual champions, to hear the gospel, to know the gospel, to embrace the gospel, to live the gospel, to share the gospels. That's our job as parents and as grandparents. Consider this, he asked. What's the greatest need for the Christian community in America today? According to Barna, we need to sit back, take a deep and intense and realistic look at our own faith. And that's one of the reasons why I teach an in-depth Bible study, because I'm not interested in fluff Christianity. I'm not interested in ice cream Christianity. I'm interested in the real truth of God's word. Let's go a little bit further and tell you that some people are. Thank God for the ones that are bold. Now, if you know this band, it was Three Doors Down. Three Doors Down is a secular band. It's been around since 2000. That's when it had its popularity. Three Doors Down lead singer Brad Arnold surprises his concert fans with a message of faith saying, Jesus loves you. You gotta love this. This is where it has to happen. The award-winning rock band Three Doors Down performed their well-known hits for an energetic crowd in Hershey, Pennsylvania last weekend, but also surprised the audience by sharing a biblical message. A Grammy-nominated and American Music Awards winning band, Three Doors Down is known for mega hits such as Kryptonite, Here Without You, and When I'm Gone, all of which reached the top 5 on Billboard's Hot 100 list in the early 2000s. Here Without You has 1 billion YouTube streams. Three Doors Down is not a Christian band, but lead singer Brad Arnold told the crowd in the August 23 performance he felt led to discuss faith. He made the comments prior to the band's song Away from the Sun. He said this, "The world surrounds us with a message that will never be good enough, will never be strong enough, will never be beautiful enough, will never be rich enough," Arnold said. He said, "Such messages are a total lie." He went on to say this, "You will always be enough because Jesus Christ loves you and died for you." Arnold encouraged the audience to repeat after him, "I am the one that Jesus loves." He said he loves you enough to let you know that you're not complete. That's not all you'll be. There's more for you, I promise you. There's more for you in Jesus, and you will win if you trust him. Man, that is refreshing, especially after I just read to you about certain things. Now, unfortunately, I got to give you some of the moral decay that's going on in America, and I don't like to talk a whole lot politically because I'd be here all night. But LGBT group Waltz founded wants to trans kids, defund police, and abolish borders. No one knows what this Democratic Party ticket's like. We need to understand what it's about. Democratic Vice Presidential candidate Tim Walz has boasted of founding the local chapter of an organization that demands, quote, the abolition of the police, abolition of borders, reparations for all indigenous and black people, placing males and females correctional institutions, and transgender procedures for minors without parental consent, all while concealing children's transgender identity from their parents. An LGBTQ website said that Walz's behavior towards a student would get him labeled as a groomer today. A groomer is somebody who trains someone to be LGBTQ. The LGBTQ group, a website, says he's a groomer. Do you want a groomer as your vice president? Walz's wife is no better. Her name is Gwen, is equally supportive of indoctrinating Christian children in group's agenda because she considers it part of her religious faith that God created some people gay. I'm quoting. Tim Walz founded the local chapter of GSA Network at Mankato West High School in the late 1990s. This guy's been at it for a while. The GSA Network codified its political beliefs in a document on its resource page titled Truth 9-Point Platform. Platform calls for the abolition of the police, U.S. immigration and customs enforcement, borders and judicial system, and an end of the cisgenic heterosexual patriarchy. Reparations for all indigenous and black people, including indigenous reclamation of stolen lands. That means you'd have to give the entire United States back to the Indians. And free and non-compulsory education for every single person. We demand abolition, they said. Abolition of the police, abolition of borders and ICE, abolition of current punishment-based justice system. We demand for our communities to be empowered or take care of themselves. No borders for rehabilitation and healing justice, the manifesto declares. It claims that it builds upon the Black Panthers Party 10-point program. Black Panthers. We are in a moment which calls for us, they're saying, to bravely and ferociously fight for our communal liberation, which will be launched in the name of our transgender and gender nonconforming ancestors who struggle before us. The revolution is a relationship. The Walz family signaled its solidarity with George Floyd BLM riots, which touched off in Minnesota in May 2020. Gwen Walz, his wife, said she inhaled the smell of burning tires through her open window in order to feel close to the revolutionary BLM movement. I'm not making this stuff up. Whistleblowers say Tim Walz ordered police to abandon the 3rd precinct to arsonists, whom Kamala Harris urged her followers to bail out of jail. Is this what America wants? The GSA Network believes in promoting transgender ideology and facilitating children's transgender transitions without parent consent. The GSA Network also believes in placing teenage boys who say they identify as transgender in female juvenile detention facilities. Tim Walz has put many of the GSA network's political priorities into action as governor of Minnesota. He signed a bill, House File number 146, that would take minors into state emergency custody if the child has been unable to obtain gender-affirming health care. In 1997, Gwen Walz announced out of the blue on the first day of her 10th grade English class that would be, quote, a safe place for gay and lesbian students. This is an atrocity. This is something that's unbelievable. Please think about what you're doing. If you're, and hopefully you're not out there thinking you're going to vote for these two people. Please, America, think what you're doing. Let me go a little bit further in moral decay. Indoctrination works. American adults identifying as LGBT approach 10%. What's happening in our culture? The number of American adults who identify as LGBT is increasing, especially among youth, according to survey results. Last year, Gallup polled over 12,000 American adults and found that 7.6 identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or whatever else they want to talk about. That number's up from 5.6 in 2020 and 3.5 in 2012. Our culture and our nation is changing drastically. From 2012 to 2017, American adults who self-identify as LGBTQ rose from 3.5 to 4.5. From 2017 to 2020, from 4.5 to 5.6. Between 20 and 2021, 5.6 to 7.1, and nearly 8% by the end of 2023. It's constantly going up. The pressure is everywhere. People are ditching Christianity. Pulpits are not saying anything about it. Youth are not attending church. They're not getting Bible training. They're not hearing it at home. And they're accepting everything the culture says. According to the survey, 22.3% of those born between 1997 and 2012, Generation Z, identify as LGBT. 22%. Almost a quarter of Generation Z. They're lost and they need God. Generation Millennials, 4.5%. Generation X, 4.5%. Millennials, 10%. However, the percentage of American adults who identify as transgender has grown exponentially, with Millennials more than twice as likely to identify as transgender than Generation X adults and Generation Z adults. Almost 3 times more likely to identify as transgender than Millennials. If current trends continue, Gallup tells us, it's likely that the proportion of LGBT identifiers will exceed 10% of the United States population. Can you say Sodom and Gomorrah? I'm telling you, we are in the calm before the storm. Judgment is coming for America. Let me say it again. Judgment is coming for America. God will not stand back forever. He's got great grace and great mercy, but please don't forget that God is a judging God also. Let me go a little bit more and tell you a little bit of technology. Advanced technology and the coming global empire. Listen to this really well. It sounds almost science fiction, but it's science fact. A series of recent news stories have highlighted the massive advances made in the field of artificial intelligence, AI, specifically in regard to facial recognition technologies. According to the BBC, the police used facial recognition technology to scan an entire crowd at a recent air show in the United Kingdom, which had dozens of thousands of people there, leading to the arrest of 3 people. Last week, the Transportation Security Administration arrested a woman after facial recognition devices detected her trying to use someone else's identification and boarding pass at Tampa International Airport. NBC News, meanwhile, reports facial recognition technology is being used as Major League Baseball stadiums across the United States. And Reason Magazine says the National Football League is also doing it. NBC News detailed the story of Kelly Conlon. Conlon was kicked out of Radio City Music Hall after facial recognition technology alerted security to her presence. She was entering the venue with her daughter and a pack of Girl Scouts to watch the Rockettes. Conlon was an attorney at a law firm suing the parent company of Radio City Music Hall. Even though Conlon wasn't directly involved in litigation, the venue pulled her photo from the law firm's website and added it to their database. Facial recognition technology instantly identified her as she entered the venue, and security personnel showed her the door. This is a world in which we now live. More and more public venues are under total, constant surveillance. Think of the power this technology gives governments like the Chinese dissidents, political activists, ethnic minorities, Christians, and other enemies of the state will also have nowhere to hide. And as we just read, China isn't the only entity taking advantage of this technology. Sports teams around the United States So it's the rise of Big Brother. We hear about George Orwell and his 1984 novel, but let me just tell you a little bit about it without telling you the whole thing. In George Orwell's novel of 1984, we're first introduced to what's called Big Brother, an omnipresent, all-powerful, and well-intentioned totalitarian regime. The book's hero, Winston Smith, lives in a world where every single citizen is under 24/7 surveillance. Personal privacy does not exist. Government controls every aspect of people's lives. Monitors in Winston's apartment spy on him when he's home. In 1984, that was science fiction. Today, this is science fact. Other devices spy on him when he's not home. Hidden cameras and microphones capture his work, his deeds, and even his facial expressions. Sound familiar? This is exactly where we are right now. So what's coming? Well, here's where you got to put your hats on and listen to me for a moment, because it sounds science fiction, but I promise you it's coming. Look what people do today in America. They upload pictures of themselves and their friends to Facebook. Then they tag them so AI systems can recognize them. They reveal personal information on Snapchat and X, formerly Twitter. They set up doorbell cameras connected to the internet, and sometimes indoor surveillance cameras connected to the internet. And they set up devices like Siri and Alexa in their homes. These devices respond to voice commands and make life much easier for them, but they also have a downside. By definition, they're always listening to you. That means a microphone is in your house listening to you at all times, 24/7, 365 days a year. And some of these devices feature their own cameras. So as time goes by, these devices will become smaller and smaller and cheaper and cheaper. And as they become smaller and cheaper, they'll become ubiquitous. They'll be absolutely everywhere. How much smaller and cheaper will these devices become? Imagine trillions of HD cameras and microphones, each one the size of a, you ready? Dust particle. They're working on it. Some might be so small the naked eye can't see them. These cameras and microphones will be constantly recording everything. How will they be placed? They won't be directly placed at all. Like dust, they'll spread around the earth and settle on every single surface. They'll be everywhere. They'll settle on your clothes. They'll come in through the ventilation in your house. They'll stick to the bottoms of your shoes. They'll blow through the streets. And this nano dust will send raw video and audio content straight to the government. In the past, all this raw video and audio data would be useless. It would take legions of intelligence analysts a century or more to listen to just one day of global conversations. But with AI, humans don't have to sit and listen. It'll be instantly processed. So it's a coming global empire. So why does it all matter? Because 2,000 years ago, the Bible said a single government will rule all the people of the world. Revelation 13:7. It also said the leader of the government will exercise such total control, he'll be able to decide who can buy or sell anything. Think about those statements. A global government will have total and complete control over all commerce. To achieve this feat requires a police state like the likes of which the world has never seen. Was such a state possible in the first century? No. Was it possible in the 20th century? No. Is it possible in this century? Absolutely. And it won't just be a possibility, it will be a reality. Government won't be able to resist the temptation AI and other advanced technologies would offer. Jesus himself said, when all these things begin to happen, look up, for your redemption draws near. In fact, he said, the generation witnessing, seeing these things, will not pass away before he returns. Man, I am all over that tonight. I am ready for him to come back. Let me give you one last one. It's kind of an interesting one. I know our in the news is going a little long, but this one's kind of interesting. Ants tend to each other's wounds. I love the Bible. It gives you so much truth without telling you a whole lot of detail on it. The author of the book of Proverbs tells this, go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Proverbs 6:6. Indeed, much wisdom can be gleaned from the study of ants. New research shows some ants care for their injured comrades by cleaning their wounds or amputating an injured limb. Listen to this, it's wild. Ants determine whether the injury requires cleaning or amputation based on its location and consistently treat the wound accordingly. In the case of amputations, the survival rate for the injured ant increases from about 40% to 90% or higher. A wound cleaning increases the survival rate from 15% to 75%. Etymologists recognize the benefit to the colony of such medical care and are quick to attribute the practice to evolutionary development. Yet the ant's leg amputations take from 40 minutes to 3 hours. Are you kidding me? As the lead researcher author noted, the level of care is the most sophisticated in the animal kingdom, rivaled only by our own. The idea that such an advanced system arose by natural selection or evolution, acting on randomly mutation, rightly strains your credulity. However, the same God who instructed us to gain wisdom by observing the ants also noted that his existence can be clearly seen in his creation, Romans 1:20. So it's far more far-fetched to assume ants possess incredible foresight than to mindless evolutionary process, or to suggest the involvement of an all-wise designer. God designed those ants. Solomon said, you may want to consider them. They know some things you don't.